Hi folks, and welcome back to Now Watch Me Listen, the series where I talk about my favorite film sound designs. It's been a long few weeks, but I'm back. And I'm here to talk about one of my favorite films both on a personal front and on a sound design front. And that film can only be Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And in my opinion, when it comes to detailed and thoughtful sound design, you are not going to find a soundtrack more intricate than Scott Pilgrim's. The visuals of this film are so rich and dense that the sound had no choice but to match it. For example, not only did the sound team have to build up multiple intense fight sequences as Scott fights his way through Ramona's 7 evil exes, they made each of those fights sound unique from one another in order to reflect the different characteristics of each evil ex. So, a punch thrown in the fight with Matthew Patel is gonna sound different from a punch thrown in the fight with Roxy, which is gonna sound different from a punch thrown in the fight with Lucas Lee.
Can I have your autograph, please?
They went out of their way and made their jobs intensely more difficult just to reinforce the differences between each evil ex at the sonic level. And none of these fights are straightforward or grounded in reality either. Every single one of the fights is very heavily influenced by the aesthetics of 8-bit fighting video games. So they also took the time to intricately weave in sound effects that emulated that 8-bit video game sound. I mean, trying to balance those fantastical video game sounds with the real-world grounded elements of a fist fight, I mean, that's not easy! But even outside of those big fight elements, there's always something going on with the sound. Even in relatively quiet scenes where it seems like there's nothing going on, there's always something in the background that's reflecting the current emotions going on in that scene. Like when Scott brings Ramona to that first battle of the bands and Knives is there and he suddenly realizes, oh, he's trapped between these two women. There's always a bit of microphone feedback going on in the background that only builds the more uncomfortable he gets. And every time there's a camera whip, instead of just putting a generic whoosh, they will pull from the diegesis of the scene to fill that space. Like Scott spilling a cappuccino in his lap when talking to Gideon on the phone, or a car going by when they're talking on the street. From the smallest, quietest moments to the biggest, most bombastic scenes in this film, there is always an insane amount of thought and detail put into the sound of this film. It is rich and complex and elevates the storytelling to a whole nother level. God, now I want to rewatch Scott Pilgrim.